Hello friends, welcome to Samuch Speaks. On this episode, we're talking about It's Your Story Too. And we'll be looking at the Bible with the new eyes. So, we'll be reading the Bible today with the new eyes because it's your story too. You know, most modern gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender persons are either afraid of the Bible or unfamiliar with its content, thinking that the Bible has only bad news for LGBT people. While it is true that the Bible was written in the context of patriarchal heterosexist cultures, the message and the story of God's unconditional love in Christ can also be the power of salvation for LGBT community. A bold, proactive reading of the Bible offers new life for LGBT people, for their families, and for their friends. Therefore, there is a growing consensus among respected scholars of Bible that have maintained that the Bible does not condemn same-sex, monogamous, loving relationships. Therefore, contemporary LGBTI Christians should focus on proving that the Bible does not condemn homosexuality because it is time to move beyond defending the position to actually owning the position. It is not enough for the Bible to simply not condemn homosexuality, but you as an LGBTIQ person should be able to say, yes, the Bible is my story too. All right, let us open the ancient closet doors. You see, liberation theology and feminist Bible critique have maintained that the Bible should be read from the vantage point of empowerment, especially from the new eyes of oppressed people. When we read the Bible stories through today's experience, they come alive with new relevance. You see, what if we just assume that lesbians, gays, bisexual, and transgender people were always in the Bible? What if their historical counterparts followed Moses and Miriam in the Exodus and walked with Jesus by the Sea of Galilee? What if they were everywhere and always have been, even when they were silent and closeted about their sexuality? Therefore, I think it is time to boldly liberate some biblical gay, bisexual, lesbians, and transgender characters and stories from the ancient closet doors. The centuries of silence in biblical commentaries and reference books must now be broken down by such persons who are passionately searching for biblical truth about human sexuality. Some stories are highly incontrovertible. Others are equally, compelling lesbians and gays. But there are other stories which curiously suggest that there are same-sex relationships existing in the Bible. And all of these stories can empower LGBTI persons to joyfully embrace the Bible and understand what the Bible actually talked about LGBTI people and about homosexuality. Someone may ask, but what difference does it make if LGBTI people goes about reading the Bible and embraces the Bible or sees themselves in the Bible? What difference does it make? The difference it makes is that it helps LGBTI people to see persons like them in the Bible and not to just unrealistically assume that all Bible characters and all Bible actors and stories are all heterosexual. What difference does it make? It makes a difference that in referencing LGBTIQ individuals, they will see that there is no condemnation and there is no cross-referencing of homophobic interpretation, as we have seen in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah and in the Leviticus laws. What difference does it make? The difference it makes is that it invites LGBTIQ people to fearlessly read the Bible and to apply its healing and empowering message to their lives. That's the difference it makes. And if these are the only difference it makes, that's a huge difference in the life of people that have long been oppressed with the same biblical scriptures. Now, let's dig into some foundations. You hear this argument, if your parents were gay or lesbian and if they had had same-sex relationship, would they have given birth to you? And when I hear such arguments, I normally ask, how about sterile couples? How about barren women? How about the barren ones? Those who are not able to conceive naturally within their heterosexual marriages. Are those ones to be mocked? Anyways, let's dive into the scriptures about this. One place to begin exploring LGBTIQ history in the Bible is with the historical concept of immortality. The Hebrew scriptures are not very clear about any consistent concept of life after death. The primary way that one could achieve immortality was through one's hair. The worst fate that could befall someone was to be cut off from one's people. This could happen by being exiled for certain crimes, by public execution, or by dying without leaving any children. Prosperity and having many children were viewed as dual signs of God's favor. Biblically, we can see this in Psalm 127 from verse 3 to 5. We can see this in Psalm 128 from verse 3 to 6. And in this context, female barrenness was considered a curse, because a woman's worth was connected to her ability to give her husband children. So the Bible is full of stories of women who desperately prayed to God to open their wombs. We can see it in Psalm 113 from verse 9. We can see it in Genesis chapter 30 from verse 1. We can see it in 1 Samuel chapter 1 from verse 10. But barrenness became a metaphor used by the prophets to describe Israel's pitiful condition when they felt abandoned or cursed by God. Isaiah 54 begins with a poignant recasting of this metaphor, barrenness being used, to showcase Israel's abandonment by God. Isaiah's prophetic message then revokes the curse of barrenness, and Israel became a barren woman with many children. 2 chapters later, after Isaiah chapter 54, we saw Isaiah use the term dry tree, that's a female image of barrenness, to describe the eunuchs. It also associated the term cut off with eunuchs. The term eunuch, therefore, in Isaiah 56 is possibly a generic term used to include men and women who do not have children. We are driving somewhere, just be with me, yeah? The main reference in the law, which may be the source of exclusion of eunuchs from the temple, is in Deuteronomy chapter 23 from verse 1. But when you go to Leviticus chapter 21 from verse 17, it says that only those who are unblemished can present themselves before God. That means the exclusion of the eunuchs was done based on the fact that they were blemished. And this also excludes eunuchs who in the ancient pagan religions were temple priests, and perhaps excludes their children born of incestuous unions. Ultimately, Isaiah proclaims an inclusive covenant which promises the eunuchs and the barren women full participation in the blessings of God, and a name better than sons and daughters, an everlasting name that shall not be cut off. In this context, we look at eunuchs from the lens of the LGBTI community, particularly the transgender community. We are driving somewhere. And this leads me to say that some people are born eunuchs. Jesus made it known in the scriptures. So who were the eunuchs of the Bible? The word eunuch seems to refer to a male who has been castrated, often to render him safe for female royalties. However, there are references to eunuch as court officials who were not necessarily physical eunuchs. Eunuchs referred to in Genesis, Isaiah and Jeremiah and Daniel, as well as in the New Testament, we are not all castrated eunuchs, and we are not all castrated males. Eunuch is a more generic word that may well have included barren females, gay foreign court officials, magicians and priests, as well as castrated males. Castrated males were often functional, if not constitutionally, homosexuals. Jesus speaks about 3 kinds of eunuchs. For there are eunuchs who had been so by birth, and there are eunuchs who have been made eunuchs by others, And there are eunuchs who had made themselves eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. Let anyone accept these who can. Matthew chapter 19 from verse 12. Therefore, one might assume that eunuchs, made so by others, are those who had been castrated. Those who made themselves eunuch are voluntary celibates. But what of those, however, who were born eunuchs? Jesus makes it clear that heterosexual marriage is not the norm for everyone. So, those eunuchs who were born eunuchs, who are eunuchs by birth, heterosexual marriage is not for them. And so, by extension, heterosexual marriage is not for everyone. And by extension, heterosexual marriage is not for LGBTIQ people. This important comment by Jesus, which acknowledges lifestyle other than heterosexual marriage, equally applies to LGBTI people. There are two stories of black eunuchs, both royal court officials, who exemplified God's redemptive action. In Jeremiah chapter 28, an Ethiopian eunuch saves the life of Jeremiah and an unmarried prophet. Jeremiah, in turn, brings a message of God to the king, which describes how Jerusalem can be saved. Another Ethiopian eunuch, in Acts chapter 8, is baptized by the apostle Philip. The eunuch who was reading from Isaiah chapter 53, which was awfully close to Isaiah chapter 54 and 56, where we discussed the barren women. A passage of Messianic prophecy which describes the destiny of those who has been cut off, and equally describe the destiny of the suffering servant who will be cut off from the land of the living. Of course, the eunuch got the message that him as a eunuch has been cut off because he has blemish, so he cannot come into the gathering of the people of God. Hence, the question he asked Philip, what is it that is preventing me from being baptized? And Philip answered, nothing. Therefore, view all these eunuchs as part of LGBTIQ people. And I'm asking, in place of the Ethiopian eunuch, to the Christian community who stands as Philip today, what is preventing you from baptizing LGBTIQ people into the body of Christ, welcoming them and affirming them? And Philip just said, nothing. Let's dive into the book of Acts and define a lesbian and gay nation. The book of Acts is an important account of the early church as it attempts to preach and live an unhindered gospel when we look at Acts chapter 28 from verse 31. Today, there is a great global awakening of LGBTI community, but there is still a need for this global awakening of LGBTIQ community to access this unhindered gospel. There are two crucial stories that are central to such unhindered gospel, which are the story of Peter and Cornelius in Acts chapter 10, and the story of Philip and the Ethiopian eunuch in the story of Acts chapter 8. Both of them have their roots in the prophecies of Isaiah chapter 56. Isaiah proclaims a future, a day when Gentiles and eunuchs will be included among the people of God, and their sacrifice will be accepted. Therefore, the Greek translation of the Hebrew word for accepted in Isaiah chapter 56 from verse 7 also appears in Acts chapter 10 from verse 35. Ethnos uncovered. In the story of Peter and the Roman centurion, Cornelius, who is a Gentile, Peter is given a divine revelation from God. God shows no partiality, but in every nation, anyone who fears God and does what is right is accepted to God. That is Acts chapter 10 from verse 34 to 35. Therefore, the word nation in this context is actually the Greek word ethnos, from which we derive our word ethnic. Therefore, the term refers to any race, any culture, or any people. Thus, through the experience of Peter and Cornelius, Peter learns that among every race, among every culture, among every people, those who fear God and do what is right are eligible for baptism. Certainly, there are heterosexual people who engage in homosexual sex. There's no argument about it. And there are LGBTI people who have never had sex at all. There is no argument about that. Therefore, are LGBTI people a kind of behavior or a kind of people for whom homoerotic attraction is but one characteristics. If an ethnos could be defined by a common history, vocabulary, culture, institutions, heroes, political leaders, scholars, values, and the ability to recognize each other even when submerged in a dominant culture. Therefore, we can say that LGBTI people are included in the word nation as used in Acts chapter 10 because they are a group of people. They are a community of persons, who are defined by a common history, a common culture, a common practice, a common lifestyle. Therefore, they are a nation as described by Acts chapter 10. But what other evidence is there that LGBTIQ people exist in the Bible? There are very complex stories, and we're going to dive into them one after the other. But join me next time on our next episode while we dive on the New Testament scriptures that affirm LGBTIQ people. Thank you, friends, and see you some other time. Bye.